This is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're here at the Source Capital Group 2016 Disruptive Growth and Healthcare Conference in New York City. With me right now is Trent Telford from Covata. The symbol is CVT on the ASX. Trent, welcome to SNNLive.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks for having me today.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, for our audience, let's get an overview of the company.
Sure. We're in the data security business, so cyber security, all that sort of stuff. You hear about Anthem and the Pentagon and the Department of Defense being hacked. Well, we're here to try and help solve those problems.
Okay, so with cybersecurity, there's so many different things under that umbrella. What exactly is Covata solving? What's the problem they're solving?
Right, so the problem is all those organisations have been hacked, but I think the common denominator is that I think you'd all agree, JP Morgan, DOD, they're not slack when it comes to security. But the problem is data moves in and out of our organisations now, through our firewalls, mobile networks, smartphones, cloud. We've got to focus on protecting the actual data itself, not relying on the network to do it. So we approached it differently by protecting the pieces of information. So whether they're on mobile networks or in cloud, it doesn't matter where it is. It's always encrypted and safe and tied to people and identity and policy, not just relying on a network to do it.
So how exactly are you doing it that's different than how maybe your competition's doing it?
Right, so what we did was, first of all, we took away the hardness, if you like, of encryption, because no one wants to do encryption. So that's all done for you in the background. The second thing we did was tie identity to it. What's the point of encrypting something if you don't know who you're giving the key to? So connect it to identity, who you are or what the machine is if it's Internet of Things. The third thing we did was policy. So if I know who you are and what the file is and the encryption is, policy comes into play. For example, in government, policy could be, one person has top secret clearance and the other person only has, basic level clearance. So when I share the file with them, it checks the identity first and then it checks the policy and says, hang on, this person doesn't have the right clearance, no key for you, but key for the other lady.
So what I'm hearing, there's 3 levels of data protection that we're talking about here. So would you say that your competition that's currently out there, were they not doing the 3 levels, or they only doing 2, or how are they doing it, or how are you doing that's different than what's currently out there?
So that concept, if you like, of tying together identity plus encryption plus policy, we've got US patents on that, and we've tied that together in a way no one else has done. So, for example, we've just done a 10-year deal with Cisco to take this technology and, as a partner of Cisco's, and embed it with a lot of the offerings Cisco has around the whole buzz area of Internet of Things or Internet of Everything, their cloud. So I think it's fair to say that's what's unique. We've done it that way, and the partnerships with Cisco, T-Systems, Deutsche Telekom in Europe, government contracts, all those types of organisations want us because those 3 things give you compliance, right? And compliance and regulatory needs are what the big deal is. And encryption, identity and policy means you know who did what with what data when.
What's especially interesting is when it comes to industrial Internet of Things, you need to have those things in place because you might have new employees coming in every single time to come and work big heavy machinery potentially. But maybe for our audience that might not be totally familiar with the concept of Internet of Things or even industrial Internet of Things, can you quickly explain that just so that we can understand how what you're doing applies to that?
Sure. So let's take IoT with regards to, let's take an example of agriculture, for example. You imagine all the farming and farming equipment across the United States. You get to the point where all the equipment is enabled with sensors and connected to the internet. From the moment a corn or wheat crop is planted in the ground, the sensors are sending information back to the cloud saying soil moisture, amount of seeds planted, for example. And over the course of that crop, the machines are constantly sending that data back to the cloud. The cloud's sending information down saying add this much phosphate or this much fertiliser or this much irrigation, etc. So in other words, the farmer can make sure that they, with all those sensors in the field, that they optimise the yield of the crop. Now you'd think, why does all those little pieces of data need to be secure? Well, in and of itself, those small pieces of data don't need to be secure, but if you aggregate it all, you've got a very, very good view of what the yield of the US corn or wheat crop's going to be. And you imagine the value of that to the Chicago Futures Exchange, for example. Now, the same thing applies in smart meters in infrastructure and trains. If the bad guys get in and hack those networks and spoof or make fake messages, they can cause chaos on train grids on trains or power generation plants, all sorts of things. So all that stuff's got to be secure.
Another thing I want to know about is the company's current customer base. Who are you serving in this market?
One of our big customer channels, if you like, is government. So we've got a history in government through defence and federal government agencies. So again, that encryption tied to policy and identity is unique. So you can imagine when it comes to sharing sensitive information in cloud and on the internet. So federal government's a big customer base for us. We also tend to partner with big sort of OEM type deals where partners want to embed this technology. So Cisco, for example, is a big customer of us, and therefore, it's white labelled in there, so their customers get access to this security. And then big enterprises. So, for example, in Europe, we have the largest healthcare insurance company in Germany called Barmer, 20-odd thousand. It's being rolled out to 20-odd thousand staff in their enterprise. So it's a combination of enterprise, government, and big OEM deals like Cisco.
And I know we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but I just wanted to dedicate a question specifically to this. So all your technology is patent protected, is that correct?
That's correct. Patented, there's two parts to it really. There's all the patents, and there's also certifications. A big reason we have the business we have is we've spent years and millions of dollars on certifications. US government type certifications like FIPS, Common Criteria, a whole range of certifications that mean, when big enterprises or government use the technology, they can be sure that independent bodies have looked under the hood and made sure it does what it says on the box.
Okay, so and now I want to know, how big is this market? How big is the market you're currently serving?
I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg for us. It'll take time with partners like Cisco for it to embed more broadly. But I think it's fair to say if you're looking across the tech business, there might be some areas of consumer, whether it's the Facebooks or various social that are going, that are booming. But outside of that, I think you'd have to say that cybersecurity and all that sort of space is probably the hottest area right now for investment. So, there's not going to be less hacks, right? The problem's getting bigger and bigger every year. And, when DOD, the Pentagon and the White House have put their hand up saying, we've got to do this differently, I think we're only on the tip of what's about to come in the change.
Okay, so what are some of the growth drivers for your business?
The growth drivers are that that it's now board level conversation in large enterprise and in government, obviously at the steering committee level. So they're now saying, look, well, everybody's admitting that the bad guys will get into your networks. You will be hacked, right? It's only a matter of time. The question is, what measures are you putting in place? So now we have a lot of big customers saying, we won't just buy this software for part of the organisation. It's got to be across the whole organisation to be effective. So the growth drivers are board level conversations about risk and risk management. Also the issues between Europe and the US and rest of the world with data security policies. So for example, the European safe harbour laws and the issues going on there. So there are a whole range of them, but for us, it's that board level driver. What are we doing to keep it safe?
Trent, what's your background? How did you get involved with Covata?
My background, Robert, was for years I started my career in banking actually, and big projects, Bankers Trust before Bankers Trust collapsed and became Deutsche Bank. I worked for Deutsche Bank. Then I worked across Asia Pacific for a large NASDAQ listed consulting company, big IT and e-business as we called it pre.com. And from there I consulted in a lot of areas of to banks around compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, all those sorts of things. So I sort of came into security, I suppose, 10 years ago now, for banks and federal government. And out of that came the idea for looking at security differently, because every bank we spoke to as consultants, every government department was having the same issue. So I founded the company 8 years ago on that basis.
And where can our audience go and find more information about the company?
They can go to covata.com, covata.com, and there's lots of information on the website. And
I have to ask, what does Covata stand for something?
It does stand for something. Our background, early customers were defence and government, so it stands for covert data.
Okay. My name is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're here at the Source Capital Group 2016 Disruptive Growth and Healthcare Conference in New York City. With me again has been Trent Telford from Covata. This symbol is CVT on the ASX. Trent, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your time.